Let's talk about everyone's favorite subject, which is taxes, especially if you're thinking about moving to California. Hey guys, Faith here with Rooted in Redding, your local real estate guide to everything Redding. Now, I will start off by saying I am not a tax professionalist and I'm not giving any specific advice, just sharing some information about propositions and taxes that should be understood by anyone considering a move here. Also, keep in mind that any percentages mentioned today are specific to the Shasta County area, and if you're moving to a different part of California, make sure you understand what the percentage is for those areas. Today, we're going to be focusing on supplemental taxes, which you will encounter mainly if you're ever buying a house here in California. Now, there's other variances where you will experience supplemental taxes that we'll get into, but in general, it's mainly when you buy a home. But before we dive into that, let's quickly touch on Proposition 13. Now, Prop 13 is a California law passed in 1978 that keeps your property taxes more predictable. It sets a cap on how much your property taxes can increase each year, and no matter how much your home's value goes up, specifically your property tax rate is limited to 1% of your home's assessed value, and that assessed value can only increase by a maximum of 2% per year unless the property changes ownership. This means you won't see any huge spikes in your property tax bill, making it easier to budget and plan for the future. Now, I'm not going to pretend I know every state and how they handle their taxes, but here in California, property taxes are assessed and collected based on the fiscal year, not the calendar year. This means that tax year runs from July 1st to July 30th of the following year rather than January 1st to December 31st. So the fiscal year starts on July 1st, and that's when the county assesses your property and collects your taxes for that year. You'll receive your first tax bill in the fall, typically with 2 installments. The first installment covers July 1st to December 31st, and it's due by December 10th, while the second installment covers January 1st to June 30th and is due by April 10th of the following year. So to recap some key points before getting into supplemental tax and how taxes operate in California, Prop 13 limits annual increases to 2%, and property taxes are paid twice a year based on the fiscal year from July to June. Now, let's talk about supplemental taxes. Supplemental taxes are a one-time tax bill that occurs when there's a change in ownership of a property or when new construction is completed. So if you're buying a home or add somebody to the title, the property will be reassessed at the new value and you'll receive a supplemental tax bill for the difference. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule, such as adding a spouse, registered domestic partner, or children, or a few other variances which wouldn't trigger a reassessment and add a supplemental tax bill to your name. Now, let's break down how a supplemental tax bill is basically created. Let's say you purchase a property for $500,000 and the seller's previous assessed value was $400,000. Well, the supplemental tax would be based on the $100,000 difference. And in Shasta County, the property tax is roughly 1.25% of the assessed value, and then you multiply it by the proration factor, which accounts for the portion of the fiscal year remaining after the change in ownership. So here's how we do this. So using the example of the $100,000 difference, this would be multiplied by the tax rate of 1.25%, giving you $1,250. Then you would multiply by the proration rate, and if you bought the property on October 1st, there are 9 months remaining in the fiscal year. So the proration factor would be approximately 0.75, 9 months divided by 12. This means your supplemental tax bill would be around $937.50. Now, here are a few things to consider based on the fiscal year. 2 supplemental bills will be issued when a change of ownership occurs from January through May. Now, if you want to hack, only 1 supplemental bill will be issued when the event occurs from June to December. So if you don't want 2 supplemental bills, purchase June through December. Another factor to know is that many people assume they can just pay their supplemental tax bill through their mortgage impound account. Now, your mortgage usually has property taxes, interest, and insurance. However, because the supplemental supplemental tax bill is a one-time bill, it's difficult for the mortgage company to predict that exact amount. And since the mortgage company sets up your impound account based on your expected regular property taxes, they don't really anticipate these extra bills, and therefore they push it back to you to pay it out of your own pocket. Now, I will say, properties like new construction homes tend to have larger supplemental tax bills. And here's why. Because the county may only have the assessment for the land. So let's say they see the land value at $100,000, and then you close on the home with a new assessed value of $500,000. You would be subject to a supplemental tax bill based on that $400,000 difference. The same goes if you buy a home and then you add a bedroom or a pool or some other larger improvement that increases the property's value. It will be reassessed and you will receive a supplemental tax bill for the increased value. Aren't taxes just so fun? Well, I hope this was helpful in understanding how supplemental taxes work here in California, because believe it or not, a lot of people think they only have to pay regular property taxes, and then this sneaky bill comes in the mail after they close on a home or change ownership or make improvements, and it can cause confusion and anxiety like, how am I going to pay this, or do I really have to pay this? As always, if you need tax advice, speak with your tax professionalist, but hopefully this gives you a general overview of how taxes work in California, specifically supplemental tax bills, which might be new to you. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a comment, and thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of Rooted in Redding, where we not only help you find a home, but a community to thrive in. We'll catch you next week.